Finding ammo probably sucks nowadays, and you're probably wondering, how do you get what you need out of training with very low round count? My name is Josh with Big Daddy Unlimited. I'm here to kind of show you a few tips and tricks and drills that you can utilize to practice a few things that will be beneficial to your training that you don't necessarily need a whole lot. You can do it with 50, but ideally you want to bring at least 100 rounds to the range just to give you a little bit more capability as far as what you can do. And 100 rounds can go a long way if you really stretch it. I'm gonna show you a couple drills that you can do at the range with low round count that will give you good gains in certain things like transition speeds, draw speeds, eye speed, and stuff like that. That's kind of important when you need to move the gun and shoot sooner. So let's hit the range and show you some cool things. All right, so what we're gonna start off with is presenting to the target while prepping the trigger. This is gonna be a good warm-up for all the things that we're gonna do next. So you can do it from a holster of any kind, or from like a low ready all the way up, or from some kind of compress ready and press out. So what I'm gonna do is, on the target here, I've marked a little square in the center of the A zone. And what I'm gonna try to do is I'm gonna bring the gun out, present it out to that target while prepping the trigger, and I'm gonna try to hit that square as soon as I see my sight settle into that target. And for certain guns, it might be a little bit harder than most. Double action, single action gun, you're gonna have to work a little bit harder to get that trigger all the way to that certain point before it breaks. But for the most part, all you're doing is coming out. When you're presenting the gun, you're gonna try to get your finger on the trigger as soon as probably around about here as you're presenting out. And then you're going to kind of creep it all the way to the wall. So that way, once you get onto target, you're not having to prep that and waste time. And sometimes that will push you to try to go faster, and then you're gonna slap that trigger too hard, and it's gonna be really hard, and it's gonna be a bad day for you. You're gonna be really frustrated. So go through the fundamentals, bring that gun out, prep that trigger as much as you can. And if you happen to negligently discharge, or in some worlds they say accidental discharge, that's okay. We're in a controlled environment toward the target, but try to get used to prepping the trigger in some instances for transitioning and stuff like that. So let's do a couple of demonstrations and get some rounds on paper. All right, so what I like to do is I like to do a few 10%, 20% speed dry fires just to get used to getting it out there, not completely cold. So I'm just gonna keep stepping it up and ramping it up until I feel comfortable with my draw. Okay, so now we're gonna try to go live. Hopefully I don't make a fool of myself. See what we can do. And one tip, maybe have a timer with you. It kind of helps with the reaction part of it, but it's not necessary. But we're gonna use a timer and see what we can do from the draw. Okay, so we got a 166 from the draw into that small square target. A little bit low, kind of rushed the last part of the trigger. So I'm gonna make those mental notes, and then I'm gonna work that into my next movement. So we're gonna try again, see if we can get more closer into the center of the target. There we go. And it was even faster, 161. So let's do one more. Ooh, that was slow, that was a bad draw. But you kind of get the point. It was 160, it's a little bit quicker, but I kind of had to pull the gun back into target. So you can kind of start ramping up the speed as you feel more comfortable, but the whole point is getting onto that target that you're really trying to hit, not rush it. Try to feel what it feels like to manage that trigger all the way back and not just slap the crap out of it. And for this part, you could even try different drills where you can go start up range, turn around, or whatever which way you want to start. So let's take a look at the target, see how close I got to it. Right about like 7 yards, so it should be fairly close. All right, so first shot was a little bit low, corrected it here. What happened was when I kind of drew closer to around here. Elevation was good, but windage was way off, so I had to crank the gun back over. And I didn't quite wait for it to settle into the square. I kind of let it off a little bit early, but that's the way of life. All right, so now that we've gotten our warm up with the draw, getting our eyes used to seeing what we need to see and prepping that trigger, We're gonna try to do it off of transition. So for this one, you don't need a holster. You can certainly use a holster, but it's really not necessary. We're gonna start indexed on one target, and then we're gonna transition into another as quickly as we can. The main goal is to try to move your eyes as quickly as possible to the next target and pinpoint exactly where you want the gun to settle. So I'm gonna force my eyes to look over at the next target while I'm finishing up the pretend shot from first target, and then I'm gonna transition in, index onto that target, pull the trigger when I feel that it's close enough to where I want it to go off. So pretty simple. You can set up multiple targets in various distances from each other. You could even go with, you know, one at 10 yards, 15 yards, 20 yards, kind of like a distance change up. Whichever one you want to do, you can kind of mix and match them. The main goal is to start on one target, transition to another. And you could even do it to where you're transitioning between targets without shooting until you get to a certain target you want to engage, and then shoot that one. All right, so we're gonna go hot and see what we can do with this. All right, so like I said, we're gonna start out of the holster. I'm gonna index on this target here, and I'm gonna transition into this one. So it's kind of a good thing to do before you start a drill to dry fire it as much as you can. The more dry fire, the better. So what I'll do is I'll practice transitioning from one target to the other at certain speeds. So I'll start real slow, try to get used to the movement and grip tension and body position, try to make notes. Try to see if I'm seeing what I need to see. And then when I'm ready, I'm gonna start the drill. Okay. Got off the target a little bit, but pretty close. We'll try that again. That's better. Another one, a little bit faster. Oh, pulled that one. Okay, so pretty much you can start with one target to the other. You could even do where you can go from this target to that target and then to another target, or you can even start in the middle, transition to that one, and do a wide sweep transition to see what's going on with the gun. This is going to tell you kind of if you're overdriving the gun during transition, prepping the trigger a little bit too hard, or not prepping the trigger at all. For the most part, if I start here and I go over here and I'm shooting somewhere in the first half of the target, I'm rushing that trigger. And if I do it a little bit past the target, especially outside of that A zone, then I'm basically just over transitioning and not trying to stop the gun where I need it to go, not giving it enough time for my eyes to settle with the sights onto the target. So you can help kind of self-diagnose it. So let's see what we can do as far as going from one target to another, just to see if extra movement's gonna drastically change what I'm doing with my body. So let's try that. All right, so drill's gonna be, I'm gonna start on this one, I'm gonna transition to this one, and then transition to this one. And then the next one, I'm gonna go from center to the right, all the way to the left, okay? So we'll see how that looks. Okay, let's try that one more time, a little bit faster speed. Okay, so let's try from center target to left to right. See how that looks. Okay, pretty simple. I like this drill because it teaches a lot of things. You know, getting from one target to the other, settling the sights, trying to see how much you can be aggressive with certain distances. From here to here, you can be really aggressive as hard as you can. And then about here, once you trail into the target, maybe about one target away, you kind of put the brakes on and you kind of walk it in. So that way you're not blasting over the target. So what I'll do is I'll kind of show you an example of what happens when, if I were to put the gun out and transition my eyes while keeping my eyes on the gun, what that's gonna look like. You might be able to catch that footage, but let's see what that looks like. Okay, So I was basically almost past the whole target before I realized that I was there. I had to push the gun all the way back. Still got a good shot, but it took forever. It felt like an eternity. So for the most part, what we're trying to achieve is trying to teach our eyes to see quicker, transition properly. At that very end, you saw that if you were to just glue yourself to that gun while you're transitioning, you're not able to spot where you need to go. It's almost like gymnastics or anything else like that. You kind of have to spot where you're gonna land. So why not do that with the gun? You take your eyes off the gun, transition, so that way when you can aggressively push that gun as hard as you can to the next target. Of course, you wanna do it more controlled once you get closer. But for the most part, that's what it looks like. Very low round count and a lot of practice going on here. Being able to see what happens after you pull the trigger. One thing I didn't mention that you would get from this drill is when you're indexing on that target, you pull the trigger, you want to pay attention to what's happening with the sights after. Are you settling the sights back on? Because in most instances, like whether it be competitive shooting or defensive shooting or, you know, professional work, military or police officer stuff, you're not just going bang and then hoping that that one shot's going to take him out, unless you're shooting some big ass rifle caliber. But for the most part, you got a pistol and you're trying to neutralize the threat, and one shot's not going to do. So all those things you want to pay attention to. Make sure that you're watching the sights come all the way back down where you want it to, and even process prepping the trigger as you're coming back to that target, just to get those reps in. And if you happen to accidentally send one downrange into the target, I bet you're still going to hit what you were actually aiming at. But yeah, so pretty simple, easy to set up. You know, you can use any targets that you want. You don't have to necessarily use the targets I'm using, just as long as you're able to kind of like pinpoint where you want to shoot. All right, to top off the range day, what I like to do before I leave, I like to do kind of like a distance practice. So I'm going to start at 7 yards, work my way all the way back to maybe around 50. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to slow fire, basically working on my trigger prep. And for me, I like to use a timer to kind of push myself to, you know, hit that trigger as soon as I hear the beep, but with good control. So I'll demonstrate without a timer just to kind of give you an idea of like what it actually looks like to slow fire the gun and get good hits on target at any distance. So let's start at 7 yards, see what we can do. All right, let's get loaded up. All right, so whatever ammo you have left, we'll use it for this drill. So let's just say we have 20 rounds left. So maybe I'll go 2 shots per distance. So shot number 1. Okay, pretty simple. So now we're going to take a few steps back and go to, let's say, we're just going to skip 10 and go to 15. All right, 15 yards, 2 shots. Not bad, not bad. All right, on to 20. All right, 20 yards, 2 shots. Okay. All right. Let's go all the way to 50. All right. Old 50 yards. Well, here's to hoping they're there. All right, so we got 8 total shots. We're gonna take a look at the target and count what we got. I was aiming at the head zone, so what we got is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 shots total, almost all in the A zone. Actually, really only 1 out of the A zone, so that's pretty good. So there you have it. You got some drills to take home, try out, and maybe even tweak it for your own enjoyment. But like I said, it doesn't take much ammo to do something that's worth doing at the range. Try to bring as much ammo as possible, at least more than 50 rounds, and have a good time. Get on the range and shoot.